But it has also presented us with an extraordinary opportunity, a chance to reset and accelerate efforts to improve the state of our world.
We need nothing short of a paradigm shift, and the time to act is now.
I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist, so I've been watching the news. I thought that, what's Roman numerals? These are Roman numerals apart from 0, because there's no 0 in Roman numerals, doesn't include it. So to write these out in Roman numerals, you've got to go for the highest first, which is D. It's 500, right? D. Then you can start from the others, and then it just runs in a row. So it's C, D, I. Right, now this works out in Roman numerals to, I'm going to quickly put it down so I can write it, and I'll show you. It's 2. Right, 606. What is 606 in computer language? There you go. The elites always leave clues. Leave clues. Leave clues.
The COVID-19 crisis has shown us that our old systems are not fit anymore for the 21st century. It has laid bare the fundamental lack of social cohesion, fairness, inclusion, and equality. In short, we need a great reset. We have a choice to remain passive, which would lead to the amplification of many of the trends we see today: polarization, nationalism, racism, and ultimately increased social unrest and conflicts. But we have another choice. We can build a new social contract, particularly integrating the next generation. We can change our behavior to be in harmony with nature again. And we can make sure that the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution are best utilized to provide us with better lives. It is obvious that we are in the midst of the most severe crisis the world has experienced since World War II. 75 years ago, countries and people came together to shape the post-war global order, which brought us decades of peace, which brought us decades of peace, which brought us decades of peace, increased global cooperation and prosperity,
I take the threat very seriously. I take the fact that he develops weapons of mass destruction very seriously.
Bush's deadline for Saddam Hussein to leave Iraq, that U.S. warships and planes, there were F-117 stealth bombers involved, launched the opening salvo of Operation Iraqi Freedom. The attack came in waves, cruise missiles, followed by the F-117 stealth bombers with so-called bunker-busting bombs. Their target, a bunker believed to be sheltering what are called top leaders of the Iraqi regime. Now, this is what it looked and sounded like in Baghdad. It was this short, and this is what happened. And this is what happens. And this is what happened.
Days of peace
He struggles, stumbles, and shouts as he fights against the enraged rebels.
and prosperity. Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight severe virus, but to shape the system for the need for the post-corona era.
But do you ever stop and think if what you do is sustainable? And do you know what sustainable development means? Sustainable development is to make the world a better place for everyone now without destroying the possibilities for the next generations. If you wonder if something is sustainable, you can ask yourself, can we do this over and over again forever? And the better systems we create for a fair distribution, the more sustainable we are. This journey ties us together. If we are to win the battle for a sustainable future, we have to play with fair rules that applies to everyone. But for us to be the best versions of ourselves, there are certain things that must be in order, like having equal opportunities, This provides greater opportunities for us as human beings, but also for the planet. We just have to think in new ways. We just have to think in new ways. We just have to think in new ways. And there is actually a plan for this. All the countries of the United Nations have agreed on a joint plan for sustainable development. Sustainable development. Sustainable development. But for the plan to work, we need to cooperate, and we need you to be on board. We need you to be on board. We need you to be on board. Are you with us?
Five different programs. Equality of opportunity between women and men, contributing to the transformation of society. Sustainability. Solidarity. Compliance, and providing confidence to our stakeholders. We are all 2030 agenda.
Young people from all over the globe are joining up to fight for the future.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part. I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part too.
They're doing their part. Are you? Join me and save the world. And save the world. And save the world.
Years ago, you might remember this, we used to have a thing called weather. Weather used to change, and there used to be storms, and there used to be, strong weather situations, and we used to call it weather. Now, every time that happens, as it's always happened, now it's climate change, we're all gonna die. And what we have now is the coronavirus version of that, and bringing down the world economic system and destroying people's businesses, livelihoods, ability to pay the rent. Why are we doing that and not just focusing totally on those who could have a serious problem because of their immune system deficiencies?
No, and they're telling us.
I'll tell you why. Because if they carried on and allowed that to happen, the world economic system would not be demolished. And the idea is to demolish it so you can replace it. Problem, reaction, solution. That's why.
I don't know about you, but I have had more than enough of this disease that attacks not only human beings, but so many of the greatest things about our country. But after all we've been through, it isn't enough just to go back to normal. We've lost too much. We've mourned too many. We've been through too much frustration and hardship just to settle for the status quo ante, to think that life can go on as it was before the plague. And it will not. And it will not. Because history teaches us that events of this magnitude, wars, famines, plagues, events that affect the vast bulk of humanity, as this virus has, they don't just come and go. They are more often than not the trigger for an acceleration of social and economic change. Acceleration of social and economic change. Because we human beings will simply not content ourselves with a repair job. We see these moments as the time to learn and to improve on the world that went before. And that's why this government will build back better.
Take a look at America today. An economic crisis, a racial justice crisis, a climate crisis. You can't just build back the way things were before. The way things were before. We have to build back better.
On the world that went before. And that's why this government will build back better.
We can do this. We can build back better. And I'm looking forward to getting started as soon as we can.
Our next guest is already changing the world.
Pick for the 2019
paper from the journal Biosciences, co-signed by more than 11,000 scientists, asserted that planet Earth's population must be stabilized and ideally gradually reduced, to question the morality of having children at all.
There's scientific consensus that the lives of children are going to be very difficult, and it does lead, I think, young people to have a legitimate question. You know, is it okay to still have children? Is it okay to still have children?
Documentarian David Attenborough described humanity as a plague upon the earth.
I can't think of a single problem that wouldn't be easier to solve if there were less people.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
I must be missing something, because every single thing that happens today is climate change. Kids in schools are being brainwashed. Parents don't seem willing to strike back. Universities fill the heads of their students with global warming rubbish. The corporate world is virtually exercising a form of blackmail. Superannuation funds say, if this particular corporation or that particular corporation doesn't have a climate change strategy, we won't invest. Banks say we won't provide funding for a coal-fired power station. Everything's climate change. The floods in England are climate change. The tornadoes in America are climate change. The bushfires are climate change. It is we who should be terrified and aghast that people of such intellectual dishonesty are in the national parliament. This stuff is damaging, it's dangerous, and it's everywhere. We're in a cultural war. Climate change is the new religion. So they must mean that carbon dioxide's a problem. And the world as we know it will end if we don't do something about it. Hang on. Carbon dioxide is 0.04% of the atmosphere. That is over the whole world. Human beings create only 3% of that 0.04% over the whole world. And Australia, human beings, manufacturers, cows breaking wind, bushfires, are responsible for 1.3% of the 3% of the 0.04%. Is anyone seriously suggesting that we should stand the economy on its head, force up energy prices, damage business, jeopardise employment because 0.04% of the atmosphere is carbon dioxide? Where is there a political leader who'll stand in the public place and say this is unadulterated rubbish and we are damaging our children? Forget the economy. Forget the fact that energy prices will go through the roof if we rely solely on renewable energy. I'm worried about our kids. They're being fed this garbage from kindergarten to primary school to secondary school to university, in the media, in business, in politics. It's a disease. And it seems to have us by the throat. Angela Merkel in Germany has approved an $88 billion spending package, a carbon pricing scheme. Germany are going to tax flying. We are feeding our young people with dishonesty, and economies everywhere are being stood on their head. If we genuinely want to fight for the future of our kids, we're going to have to fight against this intellectual rubbish. And it appears that only a few of us are prepared to step into the ring.
Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets used the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate, overt, and open. You can see it with your own eyes. All you have to do, all American mass media has to do, is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it. There is no mystery. There is nothing to do with espionage. The main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. According to my opinion and opinion of many defectors of my caliber, only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. 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 It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. Programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of the United States society.
And yet these people who've been programmed and, as you say, in place and who are favorable to an opening with the Soviet concept, these are the very people who would be marked for extermination in this country?
Most of them, yes. Simply because the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, obviously they will revolt. They will be very unhappy, frustrated people. And the Marxist-Leninist regime does not tolerate these people. Obviously they will join the links of dissenters, dissidents. Unlike in present United States, there will be no place for dissent in future Marxist-Leninist America. Here you can get popular like Daniel Ellsberg and filthy rich like Jane Fonda for being dissident, for criticizing your Pentagon. In future, these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay them nothing for their beautiful, noble ideas of equality. this they don't understand, and it will be greatest shock for them, of course. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years. Actually, it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. So basically America is stuck with demoralization, and unless, even if you start right now, here, this minute, you start educating new generation of Americans, it will still take you 15 to 20 years to turn the tide of ideological perception of reality back to normalcy and patriotism. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world, that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. He will go to Moscow to kiss the bottoms of new generation of Soviet assassins. Never mind. He will create false illusions that the situation is under control. Situation is not under control. Situation is disgustingly out of control. Most of the American politicians, media, and educational system trains another generation of people who think they are living at a peacetime. False. The United States is in the state of war, undeclared total war against the basic principles and the foundations of this system. And the initiator of this war is not Comrade Andropov, of course. It's the system. However ridiculous it may sound, the world communist system, or the world communist conspiracy. However ridiculous it may sound, the world communist system, or the world communist conspiracy, whether I scare some people or not, I don't give a hoot. If you are not scared by now, nothing can scare you. But you don't have to be paranoid about it. What actually happens now, that unlike myself, you have literally several years to live on unless the United States wake up. The time bomb is ticking. With every second, the disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect to. unless you want to live in Antarctica with penguins.
This is the future. Yours to paint, build, create. Here you can get mad. You can get mad. And do something about it. And make sure no one is ever alone. And make sure no one is ever alone. How we learn and how we pass it on. How we learn and how we pass it on. You tell me. What we eat, what we use, and how we stop wasting it. Down to you. This is your chance to explore the issues that matter most. This is your chance to build the future. To build the future.
To reset capitalism is already underway. One opportunity in 2020 is that lots of business people are now talking about purpose and the need to instill new ways beyond pure shareholder value.
What you're seeing happening today is a very necessary return to stakeholder capitalism, if you like, i.e. the idea that business and markets should be set within a wider social context, that business and markets should be set within a wider social context.
It's all about the greater good.
Wider social context.
The greater good.
Investors and business executives are people just like you and me. They have children. Those children are skiving schools on Friday to go on strike against the environment and to go on strike against the environment. How do we become good stewards of the global environment? How do we look ourselves in the eye in 20 years' time and think that we did the right thing? There's lots of statistics out there that show that the younger people are, the more they care about these issues. That the younger people are, the more they care about these issues.
And that's an optimistic sign, I think, that people will be able to lead this change in 2020 in ways that they weren't necessarily in previous years. Business leaders to deliver on promises that they made in 2019, on promises that they made in 2019.
And they know that if they don't get this right, that next generation, the Greta Thunberg generation, is not going to be interested in using their services.
The fear element is pretty clear-cut. Essentially what you have are many C-suites who are waking up and realizing that if they don't start paying attention to stakeholders, they face regulatory pressure, they face consumer backlash, they sometimes face their own protests from their own employees, and they also face potential investor pressure. They face regulatory pressure, they face consumer backlash, they sometimes face their own protests from their own employees, and they also face potential investor pressure. If they can get ahead of the really important social and environmental changes right now, be that renewable energy, be that non-meat alternatives, be that other ways that you can tap into the growing concerns amongst consumers for sustainable products. Sustainable products.
And one is going on right now behind closed doors in England. The Bilderberg Group is a meeting of the most influential people in Europe and North America. Wall Street investors, business moguls, politicians, royalty, they're all coming together and keeping the media and everyone else out. What are they discussing? What are they plotting? Doesn't the public have a right to know? Well, apparently, no.
140 members of the global elite arrived here for a top-secret, hush-hush, off-the-record conference in the English countryside. How's this for a guest list? The head of the International Monetary Fund, former Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner, the heads of Amazon.com, Google, and BP Oil, former General and CIA Director David Petraeus, and what's a top-secret cabal of puppet masters without Henry Kissinger? All of them came here today for the Bilderberg Conference.
A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died. Experts agree, unless it is quickly controlled, it could lead to a severe pandemic, an outbreak that circles the globe and affects people everywhere. Everywhere.
What we've seen work very well in the HIV field is, in fact, procurement through the Global Fund. So having a centralized mechanism, so financially able to procure on behalf of affected countries would be critical. Centralized.
We are not out of money, yet. But the fact is we are trending in a dangerous direction and something needs to change.
Countries are reacting in different ways as to how best to manage the overwhelming amounts of dis and misinformation circulating over the internet. Dis and misinformation circulating over the internet. In some cases, limited internet shutdowns are being implemented to quell panic.
The social media platforms have to step forward and recognize the moment to assert that they're a technology platform and not a broadcaster is over. They, in fact, have to be a participant in broadcasting accurate information.
I'm wondering whether it's time to talk about this is a step up from the part of the governments on enforcement actions against fake news.
The economic turmoil caused by such a pandemic will last for years, perhaps a decade. The societal impacts, the loss of faith in government, the distrust of news, and the breakdown of social cohesion could last even longer. We have to ask, did this need to be so bad? Are there things we could have done in the 5 to 10 years leading up to the pandemic that would have lessened the catastrophic consequences? We believe the answer is yes. So, are we as a global community now finally ready to do the hard work?
And that Great Seal of the United States has on it, Novus Order Seclorum, a new order for the centuries, for the ages, forever, and for a couple of 100 years or more. That has always been the case. We're here today because we believe that.
Which hither ye have brought from regions where I
Amazon One, Amazon One.
Or else they could not buy or sell anything.